Welcome, my dear students of class 12 to this English class with me, your tutor, Atinyo Sekose. Today, our topic is called Sunshine Susan by Deepa Kiran. So let's first take a look at the author's background here. You will find that the author is a founder, in fact, one of the founder of Story Arts India. In other words, she founded this and tried to help story writers. And we can say that she is a very versatile person in the sense that she is very talented because she is not only a writer but also contributed in the AIR, that is All India Radio, as a compere, and also she lends her voice in a lot of animated works or audio works. So we can say that she is very versatile, and not only that, she also taught in a lot of central schools about teaching of English and so on. So that's what we have here, and interestingly, we have a story that also very much similar, we can say, to her success story as a girl who had achieved success. So what we have here is Sunshine Susan is also a story about a young girl who succeeded at all odds, who was very determined, brave and courageous. So let's take a look at this story. We are going to take a look at this story from the viewpoint of voices. So when I say voices, we are talking about here views and opinions. Views and opinions that can be framed by culture, that can be framed by traditions. It can be carried over or reflected by people in the community, in the neighborhood, society, or the world at large. So from that line, we are going to take a look at the character and understand the story. So let's take a look at the context of character voices here. Let's first take a look at the mother. The mother is playing a typical role that is of a mother who is expected to work at home and does not necessarily go out and work in order to earn for the family. So in the first scene, we find her waking her daughter up. And the family also represents the voices. That is the voice of telling this young girl, our heroine, Susan, that is not to go to school. In other words, because they do not have enough money and that a girl child is not expected to be educated. And also we have here the voices of the neighbor telling or saying that why are they still sending her to schools or college for education. So these are the voices that are being carried over. But we are going to find out what did Susan do in order to break away from all these and strike her independence. Now we have here her brother, that is Sandy, who also teases her as saying that she is dainty. Dainty here means a pretty girl. We have here a picture of a helpless girl. Simply, in fact, the society expects a young girl to be simply pretty and to get ready to get married when they come of age. So that kind of way, the brother is also teasing. And we know that Susan does not like to be teased or called as dainty. That is the last thing that she wants to become. So interestingly, there are two voices, that is the grandmother and Mrs. Andrew, who gives very encouraging and good advices to Susan. So we are going to find out more in detail what those are. Now let's take a look at the setting. The setting is interestingly a typical Indian village setting and a village called Sabato. So we all know that when it comes to villages are a little far removed from the main cities, or they lack the advantage of accessibility of hospital, or we can say education, and also not just that. We can say that it can also, the views and opinions can also be quick, narrow-minded. So our heroine, that is Susan, is living in such kind of a village. And also we understand from the story that it is a joint family wherein there is the grandmother, the parents, the brother Sandy, and the father is the only bread earner here. He is a beekeeper who makes his livelihood through farming. And as again, a typical setting of the patriarchal society that we lived in. And here the male or the father is expected to be the bread earner instead of the woman. And so, interestingly, the girl that is Susan is also expected to become a housewife in future. So that's what we have here. And no doubt the father works very hard and tries to keep the family. And we learned that he would return at night doing double jobs, and then a feast is prepared for him. So that kind of a typical setting that we find here. Since the father is the bread earner, the only bread earner, such kind of reverence or respect is given, and treatments are given to parents. So we have here the setting of a village, the setting of a typical patriarchal society. And remember, another instance is that the father also told our heroine, that is Susan, that it is not a girl's job. When the girl or Susan insisted to go and see the bee farm, that was what she was told. So here we have here the voices of the community, the society, or even the family, or even the neighbors saying to a girl child that it is not a child's role to become educated. It is not a child's role to go out and work and make a living out of it. So that's what we have here. And we are going to find out what is that shine or that gift that Susan has in order to break away from it. Remember, we are talking about here a success story. So our heroine, or the protagonist, that is the main character in the story, is a girl child, a young girl child, and the story backtracks a lot to when she was 16 or when she was 17, what the people said or what the family said. Now, in the opening scene, remember, like I said, she was expected to wake up early to, the mother was shouting at her, help me clean, dig potatoes, and so on. So that is the typical chores that a girl child is expected to do at home. And then again, education of the girl child is very much not invested upon. So that's why we find the family, even though no doubt they are struggling with money, but that was one of the excuse. But what did Susan do? She tried to make a living, or in other words, she tried to work and earn money on her own and try to pay for her tuitions. So that is why we find that she is very much inquisitive. She is very much inquisitive and curious, in the sense that she always wants to learn and gain new experiences. Her friends called her robot because she's always full of energy, and that kind of a good energy, that brave, courageous, determined character traits that she has was recognized by Mrs. Andrew, who encouraged the father to send her to school. So that's what we have here. And remember, since this is in the setting of a small village, a girl is merely seen as a helper, a helper to do the chores at home. And she is expected, or a girl child is expected, to get married and help nurture a family. So that was the role already, the voices, the views and opinions of a girl child, and that was also the same thing that was impressed upon Susan. And society's view on girl education is also reflected here. Remember, the neighbors said that girls have to stay home and keep the family anyway. You better get used to staying at home, being home. All these kind of views and opinions were impressed upon to Susan. Wonder why your parents are still educating you. When she was sent to college, people do not understand that why they are still investing on her education. So remember, we are taking a look at it through the views and opinions, or in other words, the voices. So what did Susan do? What shine does she have in order to overcome all these? So that's what we are going to find out. She was described as having she was 5'3" in height, but a packet of energy, inquisitive child, and she's also a nature-inspired girl. You remember, she was always inspired by nature, how trees bloom and so on, and the flowering of trees is something that also inspired her. A blossom fell, and then she found the courage to go and do what she dreamed of. And then we find that I want to do beekeeping. We find her very inquisitive here. She is always interested in it. You know, even when the father told her that it is not a girl's job and instead take Sandy to the workplace, she is always curious to learn. Why can't I come to the market? She would ask. Big enough to visit the bee farm. You know, when she was big enough to visit the bee farm, still she was being denied, and yet she insisted to go and visit. And she does not like to be called dainty, filling in a stereotype role of a girl. You know, that is something that she tries to break away from. Stereotyped in the sense that the views and opinions of the community, the society were being obeyed, but instead she is the one. Later on we also learned that she tried to earn money and pay for her own tuition, and she also learned how to ride a bike. So that was the kind of, she break away from those kind of stereotype roles that were expected of a girl. And so we can say that that is her shine, that is her determination to become an independent woman. Now, Mrs. Andrew called her as brave, courageous, and determined. And she also advised her to be consistent. Remember, she was advised to be consistent, and she did exactly that when she was listening to the father's advices. And the same thing goes that with her hard work, willing to work for 2 hours to pay for her tuition. She was consistent, and that was also one of her gifts, we can say. She also has a lot of respect and willingness to learn and heed advice. You know, advice from Mrs. Andrew was paid heed to, and she also respect her father and the grandmother. Remember, the grandmother has a very strong role or impact in the life of Susan. She is the one in a typical setting, grandmothers are expected to tell us stories, and the kind of stories that she told Susan helped inspired her, and it is very much in sync with the story of Susan. Remember, the grandmother told her about the frogs that raised up a castle, and we learned that in that story, the frogs went on a race and to raise up a castle, and in the long run, only one of them came out as the winner. And when it was asked how it did it, we find out that that frog just kept on climbing and he won eventually, but he was deaf. So in other words, he did not listen to the voices of the naysayers. Naysayers are those people, the negative-minded people who say that you cannot do it, you have this as a stumbling block, who bring out excuses. But so in sync with our story, that is Susan, with Susan's story. Why? Because she did not listen to the neighbors who did not believe in the investing of a girl-child education. She did not listen to the brother who said that you are a dainty girl. She was much more than that. She has proven that. And in fact, she has also proven that it is not only a boy's job or a man's job to be bee farming or to be farming. In other words, we also find here her success when she was able to, harvest bees, beekeeping. She learned the art of it, and she made a bottle of her own and a bottle of honey and presented it to her grandmother as sunshine. So again, we have here the aptness, the suitability of the title here. So that is her success story. She did not listen to the naysayers at all, and we find her saying none at all to naysayers. She did not pay heed to those kind of naysayers or negative feedbacks. Then we can also say that one of her shine is that she is also very positive. She has a very positive outlook. That is one of her gifts. We can also say in all sorts of circumstances, she is always trying to break away. She always see the good things. So that's why she was able to become very successful. She dreams of becoming educated, and at a very young age she dreamt about being educated and to be independent, and she did that by listening to the advice of the elders such as Mrs. Andrew and the father, and that's how she was able to make a mark for herself, in fact for her future. And she's also very independent. independent in the sense that when the family were not able to pay for her tuition, what did she do? She tried to work harder and she tried to earn money from that beekeeping and paid for her college fees. And Mrs. Andrew was very much right, because the father should have been very proud of Susan. So that's the story that we have here. And you know, eventually she also became a hero. And how did that happen? Remember, she was gifted a bike in order to commute, to travel to her school, or in fact college. You know, remember, we are talking about village here, which is remote, that is cut off from the main city. So all this accessibility are quick trouble or difficulties that lies ahead for her. But she was fortunate enough to be gifted a bike and to be riding a bike. Think about it, a young girl riding a bike in order to get to her dream, that is to go to college and be educated. She did all that, and she started learning all about the brakes and clutch and so on, and she tumbled a lot, but she did not listen to all those things, the laughters or the laughters that she met, but she climbed up again and learned to ride that bike. And eventually she became a heroine in the community. How? Because we learned that the mother was unfortunately bitten by a snake, and it was a very crucial time in order to get medical help. So what did she do? She told herself, think, you know, the word think. Instead of giving into desperation, she make use of her mind, her education, and she think about what she can do. And eventually she was able to save the mother. She was able to take the mother to the city in the hospital, and that's how she saved the mother from this very tragic incident, we can say. And so this is the success story that we are talking about here. We are talking about a young girl who is living in a very remote village, who does not have enough money for her education, who cannot, even if she can afford it, who has to travel a long distance in order to get her education, who is facing a lot of naysayers who said that no, girls are not supposed to go and work, no, girls are not supposed to get higher education, no, girls are supposed to get married at a certain age and be a good housewife, learn how to cook, and so on. All these kind of stereotyped feedbacks that she was given in the environment, she was able to break away from it because of her shine. Remember, that is the gift. That is what is her gift. She's a very determined, young, energetic, active girl, and who is always curious to learn more. So that was her gift, and because of her sheer determination, she was able to become an educated girl and become independent. And in fact, like I said, she has broke away from that kind of a stereotyped girl that we expect a young girl to be. So that is why we can say that she was indeed a packet of sunshine. She was indeed the heroine that very day when she saved the mother. And when eventually everybody learned about this incident, about saving the grandmother, you know, everyone said, sunshine girl. So she is indeed the sunshine girl, and her shine is that courage to believe in herself and follow her heart. Courage to believe in herself that she can get education, that she can work hard and pay for her tuition, that one fine day she would be able to break away from this kind of stereotyped roles that is expected of a girl child. All these kind of things she was able to overcome, and that was her shine. That is courage, and to have this conviction that you can do it. So when is the last time someone said that you cannot do that because the society or the voices or the opinions framed by certain opinions that are being imposed on you? Like Susan, I'm sure we would all be able to overcome such kind of naysayers and keep striving if in fact have enough conviction to believe in ourselves that one fine day we would be able to achieve our dreams if we are consistent and having the courage to believe ourselves or to believe in yourself. And on that note, we would be winding up today's class. Thank you all very much for joining me.